Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Employment and Appeals Committee. The first item of business on the agenda this morning is to appoint the chair for the ensuing year. Could I have any nominations, please?
Can I nominate Councillor Lucy?
And do we have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that.
Seconded by Councillor Gary Mitchell. Councillor Lucy, are you prepared to accept?
I am. Thank you very much, and thank you for my nomination and seconding.
Okay then, Chair, if we just have a show of hands just to confirm, please. That's great. Thanks very much. Over to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So we then move on to the election of the Vice Chair. We'll have any nominations for Vice Chair, please.
I would like to nominate David if he was up for it, but he looks like he may have frozen.
David, did you catch that? David?
Depends which David you were talking about.
Sorry.
Sorry, you, David Meredith.
Yeah, I am. I'm more than happy if nobody else wants it.
Do we have a seconder for David, please? Thanks, Bev. All in favour? Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you, David, and thank you for your help last year.
No,
Hopefully I won't need to call on you again, but can't guarantee it, unfortunately. So we move on to apologies. Steve, I think you said we had apologies from Councillor Ange Williams.
That's correct.
Any other apologies?
No, Chair.
Paul Bradshaw, sure. Well. Yes. Paul Bradshaw.
Okay, thank you very much. So we move on to the minutes of the previous meetings. We've got 3 lots of minutes to authorise, all fairly brief. Minutes of the 27th of March. Oh, we might as well take them on block, actually, given how brief they are. Is everybody happy that the minutes that we have for the 27th of March, 23rd of April and the 7th of May are all a correct record of the meetings? Yeah, happy that we sign those off.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So Gemma, over to you for a report for the Head of People Services, please. Thank you.
Thank you. It's just a brief update really on some of the items. I think in the last meeting just provided a brief update on some recruitment and sickness and mandatory training. So it was just to update on some of those points really. And we had quite a detailed conversation last time around what our processes were. So it's just a little bit of an update. In terms of recruitment, so in the last report provided some stats around recruitment, and in particular in relation to the risk WO00021, which relates to our ability to recruit as an employer and what the challenges around that would be to an impact on our services. I think in the last meeting we'd outlined some of the initiatives that we put in place, and there's also some stats around how our number of vacancies have reduced, our ability to recruit first time has improved, and we continue to monitor that on our quarterly performance as part of our IBP. But as a result of some of the assurances around our ability to recruit, the risk rating has been reduced, so it's been taken off the corporate monitoring report now, so that we still have to report on it on a quarterly basis, and it's within our IBP that we report on it, but it was good news to note that actually the risk of us not being able to recruit to key positions has reduced because of the mitigation that we put in place. It's also a key theme on the people strategy, so I'm sure you're aware of our people strategy. There are 6 key themes to that. There's culture and leadership, recruitment and retention, workforce planning, learning and development. But recruitment and retention forms a real key part of that, and covers the whole employee life cycle as well, from getting them into post, keeping them, from the retention element. But even as they exit Powys, if they move on, if they've got that good experience, some come back and bring those additional experiences that they've had elsewhere and bring them back to us. So it is a key theme throughout that whole employee journey. We also spoke last time about the recruitment freeze, and just to confirm that process is still remains. So that doesn't mean that we're not advertising any positions, but it just means that there's an added layer of scrutiny around those positions that are being advertised, just to ensure that appropriate review is being given to those roles, to ensure that they are needed right now, and are they in the right format that we need right now. That recruitment freeze is likely to stay in for the foreseeable future. Also in relation to recruitment, see from the minutes that we appointed the Employment Appeals Committee successfully appointed a head of finance in May of this year, third or fourth time of advertising, but we got there in the end. All the checks now have been completed for that post holder, and they'll be taken at their position from the 23rd of June, from next Monday. Sickness rates remain static, so they've gone up, I think, 0.2%, which of a day. So they've remained pretty much around about the same. And as I say, in the last figures we've got from other 10 LAs from 2023 to 2024, there's little benchmarking now done between different authorities. We've continue to have the lowest average number of days for sickness. The final thing we reported on last time was mandatory training. Again, the stats for those remain good, and mandatory training is being undertaken across all services timely. There's been a slight glitch in the system with some training, even though people have completed it not being recorded, but that's been ironed out now with the BI team. So some of the stats were a bit off, but that's been resolved now. Okay, that's it from my updates. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Gemma. Sorry, I was just going to say, are there any questions for Gemma?
Yes, why did it take so long to do the finance position? Because it's a number of weeks ago when it was somebody who worked for the authority. It seems to have taken a long time.
Oh, to get them started in position?
Yeah.
I think it's because of the other there's a process that needs to be ongoing, but that's quite short in terms of the checks, because like you say, it's an internal member of staff, but because we've got somebody covering that position at the moment as well, it's about making sure that date coincides with when that individual can take a step back. So it was about the work commitments as well, and making sure that transition was a date that was suitable.
Okay.
Gary.
Yeah, just a couple of questions on sort of the workforce numbers. What's the sort of current position, Gemma, if you know it, on vacancies? So how many vacancies have we got, if you know it, and then roughly what are we recruiting against? So how many are going to, I guess the question is, how many are going to remain vacant because we're not putting them out for recruitment under that sort of recruitment freeze? Have you got that information?
I don't have the stats to hand, but I can forward those about. The number of vacancies are reducing quite significantly, and the stats that we've got is not just because of the recruitment freeze, because the stats were slightly ahead of that. But I can certainly get those figures across. So what those are in terms of the numbers that aren't being advertised, the numbers are actually quite low on the log that we've got, but I think that as well is because managers themselves are actually doing that analysis before that formal request goes in. So what we're not monitoring is what vacancies managers have got, and that they're deciding between their head of service, that actually we can probably hold on this, or we need to pause that, or we can reconfigure it in some way. Some services may be increasing hours somewhere rather than recruiting to a full vacancy. So there are those that we're not collecting the data for, but in terms of those that are being refused, that have been requested, there are very few. And I think that's because heads of service are only putting forward the roles that are absolutely critical and essential to be advertised.
Yeah, and I guess that was part of the probing. It's helpful for us to understand what the impact of a recruitment freeze is, if there is one, and what I take from the gist of your response is actually there's little impact for the important roles that we need, because they're still going to be recruited for, but there's a better thinking process ahead of perhaps generally recruiting anyway, but also then counter to that, we're probably not having a massive impact on not recruiting with a recruitment freeze even. I guess I just note Welsh Government themselves have had a recruitment freeze for gosh over 10 years now, and it begins to make it a real struggle within them to bring in the expertise, but they've also now got a freeze on internal repositioning within government, because what they've been doing for the last 10 years is pinching the best people to shift from one department to another, obviously, and that they've recognised that has begun to cause effectively issues, isn't it, in other departments. So I would assume at the moment our recruitment freeze wouldn't stop. Do we still internally advertise posts at all, or do they all go externally?
No, we do still advertise internally as well, which can sometimes help, because it could be that we'll advertise to a role, but then we might not recruit then to that role that's been left vacant. So it does allow us a bit more flexibility. But I think, most services that, there isn't really that surplus of staff. So a lot of roles are critical and needs, it's that balance, isn't it? If you don't recruit to the role, you've got saving on the post, but then what's the cost of not recruiting to that role and not having that person there undertaking the role? And sometimes the cost of not having them is greater than recruiting to that role. So it's a real challenge. And I think that's where the workforce planning element comes into as well. And over the last 2 years, we've really improved our workforce planning processes across all services. And we're looking at workforce dashboards at the moment, so that the ease of access to a lot of that data for managers will help in that workforce planning process. So they can start to look at their succession plans, their talent management, but also foreseeing where there might be recruitment challenges in the future. So there's the thing of recruitment freeze and only recruiting if you need to, but also we're getting much better at just managing our workforce, both now what we've got and also foreseeing what we need in the future, both in terms of resource, but also skills, looking at how our services are changing over the next 5 years. So what do we need in those 5 years, and looking to see how we can make sure that we're upskilling staff that we've got now, or where we might need to change roles, that we're giving them the skills now that they'll need for those roles in the future. So that succession planning is a really important part of that recruitment and retention, because the recruitment process can be quite expensive. So if we want to develop people rather than somebody leaving us and recruiting somebody new.
Doesn't work either as well, does it? So that makes absolute sense to invest in our own internals best we can if there's that plan for those roles to be created. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
How are we doing on apprenticeships, Gemma?
Yeah, okay. Again, don't have the figures to hand, but we've got some new apprentices coming through. With the recruitment freeze, obviously there's perhaps less opportunities that are going to be coming up in the future, but our officer who's been looking after our apprentices retired last week. So we're recruiting to a new position at the moment and broadening that role as well to look at the wider skills and across the council and how we can integrate and bring in apprentices. So it's still very much in the forefront of what we want to deliver. We've got measures and actions in the IBP moving forward now for this year as well to monitor that. And, and our expectations are the same, that we will maintain that level of apprentice opportunity really for people in Powys.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Gemma? No?
I guess one general question, Gemma, perhaps just obviously we had a heavy round of, let's say, senior leadership recruitment, probably forget now, but let's say we're 12 years in, sorry, 12 months, not 12 years into that process. It might just be good to get the general feeling from you as the sort of HR lead, if you like, on how that's embedded, any issues that you foresee come out of that in terms of workforce. Is the structure about right? Is the senior leadership team, I suppose, comfortable with the positions that they hold and the senior leaders around them that they've got? Because that was quite a big, not shift, but it was a lot of work to get these people in post, and it would be good just to have a very brief update, if you feel you're able to, just on how you think that's embedded.
Yeah, I think it's embedding quite well. I think the appointment of the new chief executive as well. She was very clear that she wanted directors and heads of service to have personal development plans that were aligned to, all the job descriptions were reviewed so that they were consistent. So it was clear what the expectations were and what was expected of them, both in terms of their skills, but also how they're developing their teams. There was also a view of Emma that the CLT and SLT were working very, as much as they led their service and they had that team, that they were also a cohesive team themselves, and that seems to be working quite well. The organisational design development team as well put in a programme of leadership to support both with leadership skills, but also with the huge change and transition that the organisation was going through. So it was about that strategic change. So there's been a leadership programme that's been put in place and delivered as well to that level. So there's been quite a lot of support and opportunity for them to be working together as one team, not just managing their services.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Gemma. Okay, anybody, any other thoughts, anything they want to raise in relation to this committee while we're all together? No? Okay, lovely. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning. Good brief meeting, and I guess we will, we'll see whether we have any more interviewing to do or whether the next meeting is just a straightforward update again, but we'll keep in touch. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.